November 4, 2008. 240,000 people stand in Chicago's Grant Park in complete silence, waiting. Across America, millions gather around TV screens, in homes, churches, bars, holding their breath. Then the announcement: Barack Obama is the President-elect of the United States of America. The impossible just became real. And a nation that enslaved black people 150 years ago just elected one as president. Crisis. The economy is collapsing, banks are failing, people are losing homes and jobs, 2 wars are draining resources and lives, and the Bush presidency is ending with approval ratings in the 20s, and into this chaos steps Barack Obama, a 47-year-old senator from Illinois with an unusual name and an even more unusual proposition. That a black man with a Kenyan father and a white mother from Kansas, who grew up in Hawaii and Indonesia, who has only been a senator for 4 years, can become president of the United States. Most people think it's impossible, not because Obama isn't qualified, he's a Harvard Law graduate, former professor of constitutional law, community organizer who understands grassroots politics, but because America has never elected a black president, has never even come close, and the assumption among political experts and ordinary citizens alike is that white America isn't ready, won't vote for a black man, will find some reason, experience, or electability, or just comfort with the familiar, to choose someone else. The Democratic primary becomes a historic battle between Obama and Hillary Clinton, the presumed frontrunner who has name recognition, political machine, and the backing of the Democratic establishment, and for months it's not clear who will win because Clinton keeps winning the big states while Obama racks up victories in smaller contests, and the delegate math stays close. And every Tuesday when primaries happen the question is the same: can a black man really win white voters in places like Iowa and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, or will America's racial anxiety ultimately make him unelectable? Caucuses in January 2008, proving that a state that's 91% white will vote for a black candidate if he inspires them, if he offers hope instead of cynicism, if he makes them believe that change is possible, and suddenly the impossible starts feeling less impossible, and Obama's message, "Yes we can," stops being a slogan and starts becoming a movement. And young people and black people and white people and Latino people and Asian people all start believing that maybe, just maybe, America is ready for this. The primary drags on for months, brutal and exhausting, and Obama makes mistakes and faces attacks about his pastor Jeremiah Wright and questions about whether he's American enough, and dog whistles about his middle name Hussein and birth certificate conspiracies that will follow him throughout his presidency, but he keeps winning delegates, keeps building momentum. And in June 2008 Hillary Clinton concedes and Obama becomes the Democratic nominee, the first black person nominated by a major party for president, and the general election begins. His opponent is John McCain, war hero, senator, Republican with a reputation for independence, and the race should be close except America is tired of war and economic collapse and feeling like the country is on the wrong track, and Obama offers something McCain can't: the promise of transformation, of turning the page, of being something new rather than more of the same. And polls show Obama leading, but nobody really believes them because polls have been wrong before and America has disappointed before, and there's a persistent fear among Obama's supporters, especially black supporters, that when white voters get into the voting booth and face the reality of pulling the lever for a black president, they'll change their minds. 2008, and millions of Americans stand in lines that stretch for hours, some of them first-time voters, some of them elderly black people who remember segregation and never thought they'd live to see this day, and they wait patiently because this election feels different, feels historic, feels like something their grandchildren will ask them about: where were you when Obama was elected? And the waiting is almost unbearable because everyone knows this isn't just about politics anymore, it's about whether America means what it says about equality, about whether all men are created equal applies to black men too, about whether the arc of history really does bend toward justice or whether that's just something we tell ourselves to feel better about a country that has spent most of its existence treating black people as less than human. As polls close across the country and results start coming in, Obama's team watches nervously from their headquarters in Chicago while 240,000 people gather in Grant Park for what they hope will be a victory celebration but what could also be a funeral for hope if America rejects Obama, if the polls were wrong, if the impossible remains impossible. that everyone expected, Kentucky for McCain, Vermont for Obama, no surprises yet, but then Pennsylvania gets called for Obama, and that's significant because Pennsylvania is a swing state that Clinton won in the primary, and if Obama can win Pennsylvania it means white working-class voters are breaking for him. And then Ohio gets called for Obama, and that's huge because no Republican has ever won the presidency without Ohio, and if McCain can't win Ohio he has no path to victory, and the momentum is building, the reality is setting in, this is actually happening. At 11 p.m. Eastern Time, the West Coast polls close, California, Oregon, Washington, and within seconds, before even 1% of votes are counted, the networks call it, Barack Obama has won enough electoral votes to become the 44th President of the United States, and the announcement lands like lightning, like thunder, like an earthquake that shifts the entire ground beneath America's feet. In Grant Park, 240,000 people erupt, screaming, crying, hugging strangers, collapsing to their knees, lifting children onto shoulders so they can see this moment, so they can remember that they were here when history turned, and the sound is deafening. The kind of sound that only happens when collective joy and relief and disbelief all collide at once, when something you wanted so desperately but didn't quite believe could happen actually happens. Across America, the same scene plays out in different variations. In black churches that open their doors for watch parties, congregations break into prayer and singing, elderly women who marched with Martin Luther King sob into their hands, young black men who've spent their lives being told they'll never amount to anything because of their skin color suddenly see a black man becoming the most powerful person in the world, and something inside them shifts, something about what's possible. Something about who they can become. Americans cry too, some because they genuinely believed in Obama's message of hope and change, some because they're relieved that America proved itself capable of electing a black president, that the country they love isn't irredeemable, that progress is real even if it's slow, that maybe, just maybe, we're getting better. Backstage in Chicago, Obama watches the news with his family and closest advisors, and the emotions are overwhelming. Michelle Obama, who sacrificed 2 years of normal family life for this campaign, who endured racist attacks and scrutiny that no white candidate's wife would face, who worried about her husband's safety every single day because black men who threaten the status quo often don't live long enough to see their victories. She's crying and laughing and holding Barack's hand, and their daughters Malia and Sasha, who are too young to fully understand what this means but old enough to feel the weight of it, are bouncing with excitement. Obama himself is remarkably composed on the outside, but people close to him say that when the networks called the race, he stepped into a private room and wept, not from joy, though there was joy, but from the overwhelming responsibility of what he's just taken on, from thinking about all the people who fought and died so this moment could happen, from knowing that he's carrying the hopes of millions who see in him not just a president but proof that their country finally sees them as equal. In Grant Park with Michelle and their daughters, and the roar from the crowd is so loud that it takes minutes before he can even begin speaking, and when he does, his voice is steady but emotional. If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer. The speech continues. Obama thanks his supporters, acknowledges McCain's gracious concession call, talks about the work ahead and the challenges facing the country, but what people will remember most is the image of him standing there, a black man who will be president, his black wife and black children beside him, and the symbolism is so powerful it almost doesn't need words because everyone watching understands what this means. That the country that enslaved black people, that fought a civil war over whether black people were fully human, that spent a century after that war enforcing segregation and denying black citizens basic rights, that lynched and terrorized and discriminated and told black Americans in 1,000 ways that they were less than, that country just elected a black man as president. Obama's 106-year-old campaign volunteer and Nixon Cooper is watching from Atlanta, and Obama mentions her in his speech, talks about how she was born just a generation past slavery, lived through a time when women couldn't vote and black people faced Jim Crow, saw the Depression and World Wars and the Civil Rights Movement and the moon landing and the fall of the Berlin Wall, and now, at 106 years old, she's lived to see a black president, and the arc of her life is the arc of American progress. Slow and painful but real. Rosa sat so Martin could walk, Martin walked so Obama could run, Obama ran so our children can fly, and the signs capture something essential about this moment, that it's not just about Obama, it's about everyone who came before, everyone who marched and protested and organized and died so that this night could happen, and everyone who will come after, who will grow up knowing that a black person can be president because they saw it happen. The days after the election are surreal. Barack Obama goes from being a candidate to being president-elect, assembling a transition team and preparing to take office in January, and the reality of what America just did starts to sink in, and reactions are complex and layered because while this is undeniably a victory, it's also not the end of racism or the beginning of post-racial America. It's one moment of progress in a much longer struggle. Some people celebrate without reservation, allow themselves to feel unqualified joy for the first time in a long time, dance in the streets and post photos and call their parents and grandparents to share the moment, and that joy is real and valid because for a lot of black Americans, Obama's election is the first time their country has given them a reason to feel proud rather than ashamed, the first time America has chosen them rather than rejected them. President doesn't erase 400 years of oppression, doesn't change the fact that black Americans still face discrimination in housing and employment and education and criminal justice, doesn't protect Obama himself from the racism he'll face throughout his presidency, the birther conspiracy theories, the disrespect from political opponents, the death threats that come at a rate no other president has experienced, and their right to be cautious. Because progress is not linear and backlash is real, and the election of Barack Obama will inspire both hope and hatred in equal measure. The historical significance is undeniable. Every American history textbook will now include Obama's election, every black child will grow up knowing that someone who looks like them was president, every racist who claimed black people were inherently inferior will have to confront the reality of a black man in the most powerful office in the world. But significance doesn't mean perfection, doesn't mean the end of struggle, doesn't mean America fixed itself on November 4, 2008. What it means is that something impossible became possible, that a barrier that seemed permanent was broken, that millions of Americans chose hope over fear and change over comfort, and even if the Obama presidency doesn't solve every problem or unite every American or usher in the post-racial utopia some people imagined, the fact that it happened at all is profound because it proves that America can surprise itself, can be better than its worst impulses, can choose progress when given the chance. The country will be deeply divided. Trump will succeed him by running on racial resentment and birtherism and promises to undo everything Obama accomplished, and some people will say that Obama's presidency proved America isn't ready for black leadership, that the backlash was inevitable, that the hope was naive. But that's not the lesson of November 4, 2008. The lesson is that change is possible, that barriers can fall, that hope is not naive, it's necessary, it's the thing that keeps you fighting when the odds seem insurmountable. It's what carried enslaved people through slavery and civil rights activists through segregation and Barack Obama through a presidential campaign that nobody thought he could win. The lesson is in the faces of black children who saw someone who looked like them become president and internalized a new sense of possibility, who will grow up carrying that possibility into their own lives, their own ambitions, their own fights for justice. The lesson is in the 240,000 people who stood in Grant Park on a November night and witnessed history, who will tell their grandchildren about being there, about what it felt like when the impossible happened. Barack Obama is elected President of the United States. 240,000 people in Grant Park erupt in tears and joy. Millions across America watch in disbelief as the impossible becomes real. Rosa Parks, who died 3 years earlier, never saw this night. Martin Luther King, who was killed 40 years earlier, never saw this night. Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Fannie Lou Hamer, Thurgood Marshall, they never saw this night. But they made it possible. Every sit-in, every march, every vote denied and fought for and finally won. Every sacrifice, every beating, every arrest, every death. It all led here. To a black man on a stage saying, "Change has come to America." And for one night, one beautiful, impossible night, America believed him. Not because racism ended. Not because America suddenly became perfect. But because 240,000 people stood in the cold and millions more stayed up late watching TV screens and together they witnessed something they never thought they'd see. A black family moving into the White House. Not as servants. As the first family. That's what November 4th, 2008 means. Not the end of the struggle. But proof that the struggle can win. Not the arrival at the promised land. But evidence that the promised land exists. Yes, we can wasn't just a slogan that night. It was a prophecy. And it came true.